Guten Morgen. I do not want to reveal my identity at this early stage. This is a tragic story about my homeland. Yeah, and all of the battles that are fought in my homeland by English kings and German princes and French romantic revolutionaries. So I'm quite armless now.
I just can't find them. They've gone off somewhere to sleep.
Your Royal Highness, why exactly are Mr. Sheridan, Sir John Macdonald, and Mr. O'Sullivan handling the administration of your army?
Because I chose them. Because I consider those gentlemen to be utterly trustworthy and competent.
The first thing my men will find when they do awake is the enemy on them, cutting their throats.
That became the SNP, but they still give in to the Redcoats, yeah, with the German affiliations, which is the Windsor affiliation, with the royal palace called Holyrood, right opposite the royal abomination called Holyrood, which is the constitutional monarchy, which still runs Scotland, and its totally corrupted law courts. Yeah, and I do not have a wig so that I can look like the Lord in the skies, like the judiciary do, and they insist on the genuflection in the law courts run by the illegitimate Crown Office for 163 years, since Queen Victoria was persecuted by the German people, the poofs that replaced Prince Albert, that replaced blind Prince George of Cumbria and Teviotdale, and the man who slaughters them at Culloden is the child of George I, the new Hanoverian king from Hanover near Dresden and Belsen, Bergen-Belsen, the death camp, World War II. Yeah, and everybody blames the English, and the English are slaves to the Zionists in Hollywood, and the English are also French since 1066, and the whole thing is about religious martyrdom. This is the Jacobite wars of the Catholics against the Protestants all over Europe. Yeah, much briefer than the wars for 30 years that consumed the whole of Europe's Christianity denominations in massive murders against their own Christians, but with slightly different affiliations, like Celtic and Rangers in Glasgow. Right then, I'm going to take my bonnet off now. I'll make the video in the red coat just for irony. Oh no, I'd better not, in case I spit on it, because this news makes you really angry, even all those centuries after it occurred, because it still has the whole fucking world enslaved in the mythological battle that they're fighting for freedom, rather than to suppress and murder their people. Right then, so that takes me to this music, because the Duke of Cumberland, who slaughtered them at Culloden, was the son of George I. I think it may have been George II, but it's relatively unimportant. This is the music that this is associated with that Duke of Cumberland in retirement. Let's see if I can find it. maybe a bit slow. I apologise for that. I could do some diversions like the rest of European history about bullfighting and stuff, and the Red Revolution and stuff. None of it actually happens. Only I have solved these series of crimes. That's the French law investigators. Yeah, the de Gaulle inquests, the capacity to pretend that they tried to kill de Gaulle 6 or 7 times as a full member of the world's profiteering from World War II, when de Gaulle lived in Hertfordshire for safety reasons. And petty France in Hertfordshire or Buckinghamshire has now been covered up as an official secret because the boss at the Bank of England used to live there. Mervyn King. And I lived in a boarding house in London where the Lawrence murders occurred. Yeah, because I lived in that region. Yeah, and the Lawrence murderers get to live their lives in the Caribbean because the police pretend that there was a murder there, which is just the cover for Princess Anne Lawrence in the monarchy and her massive crimes against the people in the sporting frauds, and where the Duke of Cumberland that killed all of the loyalist Catholics that were stupid enough to fight for the French buffoon that's a Freemason comes across in his powdered wigs, makes a speech at the massive tower. The young pretender fought his battles in 1715. Yeah, and this battle was fought in 1746, as you might have just heard in that video. But the man that was the murderer of all of those Scottish loyalists that were totally in disarray and fled from the Redcoats, and all of the scenes that used to horrify me when I was a child, because remember, I'm a Catholic and I believe that you have to be loyal to the one true religion that you're born into. It's the major cause of death in world history, the Christian belief. Yeah, you get it in the neck no matter what you worship and which denomination you worship in. The people that were feared as Baptists were operating as Baptists in Anglican Berkhamsted. 400 of them taking a risk, because Berkhamsted is a kind of revolutionary town. Okay, right next door to the Rothschilds that own the world. Okay, so the Duke of Cumberland that massacred the Loyalists and the French Freemasons at Culloden retired to fucking Clusters, where the Pink Panther films were made. Kevin Kline is actually pronounced Kevin Clooney. Yeah, that's the Clooney Abbey joke about the religion and the law enforcement and the massive stashes of diamonds, gold and pearls that Christianity nets for these sad bastards that run the world like this forever, or at least until they can get away with it. Princess Anne is severely compromised now because of the statement she made. And do you get the pants joke now? The Irish rugby commentator that keeps saying pants is making the joke about the Piso family members that used that as their nickname. Okay, and the Pink Panther gets the Piso family joke into the title of this film twice, and Peter Sellers is the man who plays the role of the law enforcer with his manservant from Japan, which was persecuted by the Warner Brothers in the Looney Tunes joke. Okay, that's that video that will take so many minutes to upload that I dare not click on it. Yeah, and this is a whole series of crimes and the stashing of the loot from those crimes into Switzerland. Yeah, where the Von Trapp family were forced to flee because they did not fancy fighting for their Austrian homeland in a war that was engineered by Hitler out of the Innsbruck region where there was no room at the inn for Jesus. All of the jokes interlock to the Pisos and the German Windsors. Yeah, so Cloisters is the ski centre where the fascists now die in the skis. That is the wife of the man who made the Schindler's List film, and she was the actress that played Queenie in the Blackadder sad tragedies, and her lover, yeah, the lusty man that was played by the comedian who was called Flash in the comedies, yeah, he pretended that he was the most potent lover in the world. He died sadly very, very young this very, very year. If you're sad about that, you should genuinely become God-fearing, because you're in a very dangerous place, because you're in a team that steals from the world for 2,000 plus years. And the Panther becomes the Panzer regiments that swept into the hometown for the Warner Brothers and committed the first genocide there. Yeah, and as soon as the war was over, they had a series of inquests into that crime in glorious isolation, covered by Fox News from America. Yeah, Panzers, do you get it? And it's the same joke, because that's the joke about the Panthers and the Leopolds and the leopards that are the goddess Cybele, and the jokes about Calpurnius Piso and the temples in Naples that are the Calpurnian temples. And it's getting quite gusty, although the sun is still outside. So do you get it? The Scottish genocide is also a joke by the German warmongers, because they've got so many princes, it's impossible to detect which of them are involved in the genocide of the day. Yeah, and everything that they have, even the Kidnapped film, which is the only film you can find about Culloden now. There used to be many, many films. Some of them are about the Clan Cameron and the flight of the herons, yeah, and all of the cowardice and all of the white feather revelations that David Cameron is totally ashamed of. Yeah, that's the English Prime Minister with vast tracts of land and vast financial scandals running into the Indian nation, and the resignation of the Indian Prime Minister because of Cameron's scandals and the support for the corrupted Cairn Empire, which means that Cameron's bank at the Bank of England now has Cairn directors on the court of the Bank of England, and that's the Cairn that have no products other than coupons and bonds, and all of them are designed to cheat and steal from their investors, and all of the taxpayers fund all of that. And the armies get no pay rises at all, the police get no pay rises at all, and all of it is really, really sad, and the Piso word goes unnoticed. Yeah, and Woody, the Irish rugby commentator, says pants all of the time, because all of the Freemasons and all of the people that rise to asset strip their sport or their business world or their political sector are the people that are in the power base since the Windsors began to have a conscience about world wars. That's in the middle of 1917, yet when they're already engaged in the world's biggest ever cull, fully automated now with tanks and nerve gases that Princess Anne wants to use again, because it's much more efficient than using the false news. Right then, so did you realise that Clusters is a place where fascists frequently, like the Formula One, I wrote to Jeremy Clarkson last night and I asked him if he would help me solve the crime about the killing of Dim Wim Wiesberg. Yeah, because he was found face down in his swimming pool as the first honest head of the European Central Bank. Nobody wants to investigate that crime. If they do investigate it, someone like Clueso will be put in charge of the investigation. That's Peter Sellers, who was the son of Lord Louis Mountbatten, who was killed by Prince Philip and MI6 because he tried to take over from the drug running cabal. Yeah, and Jackie O was married into the diamond scandal that is the Clusters joke about the Pink Panther and the diamonds being easy to steal in liberal, totally neutral Switzerland, where you can get away with any financial crime, which is why Prince Charles chooses to trade out of there using his advisor Christopher Chambers, who's the boss of the St Paul's Girls' School. That's St Paul's that is immune from bombing in London and is a massive part of the English version of the Piso family's joke. Okay, we're wasting a lot of time. I'm going to go to the tabs. We were talking about salting the water in the Hanseatic League and the involvement of my family in the asset stripping of the British trains, the asset stripping of all of my family's prospects, the teaching of my children that being immoral like that and money laundering is much more important than keeping the family united, because my wife works for the government and everyone's getting to know that, like Jackie O worked for the profiteers who were more powerful than the governments which she slept with the husband of. Yeah, that is John F. Kennedy with the treasonous wife who was a spy and then married into the narcotics runners that was Onassis, and then her third partner is in the diamond scams in Cloisters, because he's the De Beers leader and his name was the De Beers magnate is Templesman. Takes you back into the Zionist menace and the 12 tribes and the treasonous Jewess who's obligated to make her children Jews at the end of the day, which is probably why my family have been separated from me. Yeah, David Cameron now understands that his family are exposed to a massive risk, that the gods are now taking revenge for stealing from our countries. Okay, so I've explained you the Switzerland fascist joke, and when people have accidents on the slope like Queenie did and die really, really young, it's because they laugh at the history of their vicious, vicious countries who are actually run by people that are low-life Germans from the Rothschild breeding chamber. Okay? Prince Albert was not an active man in a sexual context or a geopolitical violence context. He was the victim of these family crimes, murdered by them, so that the Rothschilds could take over the ownership of every bank, central bank on our globe, and all 13 of the American banks. There's Bremerhaven. Could not find it yesterday in the videos. That's where the Von Trapp captain had to go from neutral Switzerland. Yeah, if he had taken the orders of Hitler's Third Reich, who lived in Hitler's nest right above the city that they were fleeing from, where Maria was a member of the Abbey joke. Yeah, and Maria is the Virgin, and their joke just keeps being replayed again and again, and it's behind every genocide that they commit, because there is no messianic Jesus or any messianic presence even in the Islamic things that are also written by the Piso family, released through Mecca on a different set of festivals, and everybody has to pay the earth to get access to the one true God in all of the false denominations that create all of the genocides through all of human history. Right then, so we were on the Hanseatic Loons, and that is the dynasty that is the Lunenburgs, yeah, that were associated with the Windsors because of Prince Albert. And if you look at Prince Albert's name with a little bit of thoughtfulness, you'll realise that it is Bertie, and that is the stammering Hollywood joke. Out of Zion entirely for profit and to control the minds of even the world's romantic people. Yeah, because I believe that my wife is inspired by films like that. Yet she loved the film about Enid Blyton and New World Order Nazi authoress that twists the minds of children all around the English-speaking world with stories about adventure. Yeah, and she then allows her husband to be persecuted and killed in a British Army uniform, and all of that is published on the BBC, but none of the truths about Culloden are left on the media. You cannot get a picture of a red coat now, which is why I wore that fucking thing that is an icon for English colonial armies all around the world. Yeah, and is the icon for the gods and the revolutionary colours, which appeared last night when I made the second video on the Windsor's treason. Right then, so the Hanseatic League, this is pan-continental, yeah, and there is the whole of the Baltic coast, where Gerald Schroeder the German had all of the power stations taken down because they exploded one yeah, to make the power stations look like a threat to the ordinary ratepayers who now have to pay massive energy bills to European conglomerates that are Ponzi schemes that were privatised by people like John Major. Yeah, and he's the head of the Conservative Clubs UK, who are the chief drinking vent in the town of Jedburgh, where the corrupted law courts are run by the Law Society, who are totally corrupted in the laundering sector and the persecution of the innocent sector, and the drink is cheaper at the Tory Club than anywhere else in town, and the Jed name is around the town that is right next to the Warner Brothers hometown. I'm going to have to show you that on a different map. Yeah, but let's go. There's the Lunenburg thing that we stopped on, and I got caught up in explaining that my family are involved in as the Salters, and the joke that I got the death threat for yesterday, which I was in the middle of explaining when my batteries ran out, was that the Scottish flag, the saltire, is the same joke that we're sharing here. And the chip shop owner who said, if you think that's a joke, you're likely to die very, very young. Yeah, and that is the Italian man. The thing that I wanted to explain was the Cross Keys Hotel, which they have in towns all over Europe, is affiliated to the Vatican through the Cluny Abbey joke. That's the Kevin Klein joke. That is the launch of religion and the release of religion into Frankish France, and the Cluny Abbey with the saltire cross for the non-existent St Andrew on the front of it is the Scottish flag. And that's the Culloden tragedy, yeah, that all of them die in a series of interlocking world owners' jokes that they laugh at because it kills the ordinary people and the faithful people, yeah, who have been brought up in those different denominations just so they could be killed in the conflict that ensues. Yeah, so that's Salmon's Scottish saltire flag is a joke about the Vatican still running the world as a Rothschild subsidiary. And that's what the referendum was all about. It was about treason, They have all of these facts at their fingertips. None of them were prepared to use them. Yeah? John Lamont seemed the most likely, because his family are aware of my power and that I know everything they do in the South Pacific. Yeah? In the university in Dunedin and the university in Auckland that is in league with the Rothschilds Trust and all of the holdings of the Law Society and the Rothschilds in Lothian Road in Edinburgh. Right then, back to world history. Yeah, so that's why I got the death threat from the chip shop man. If you think it's a joke and you're prepared to release it, you may die really, really young at the hands of the world owners. In other words, the mafia that we still run. And now his customers never get a pay rise and they're struggling for customers, and it's only £2 for a bag of chips, and they used to be dug by the Irish Labour. Yeah, that's the Irish sectarian Labour. And the potato famines and everything that has been engineered in world history by our clerical leadership teams that party beyond retirement in clusters in Switzerland on the ski slopes. Yeah, and the Formula 1 racing driver that was the Stig for Jeremy Clarkson, yeah, he was called, I forget what his name, he had his skull caved in just this year. Yeah. I forget his name, a very famous German Formula 1 driver, and the accidents on the ski slopes are not accidents, nor are the avalanches. Just look at the people that are involved in them, and when you see the people that died in the lightning storms last week, they're members of the Duke of Edinburgh fundraisers and Prince Philip's secret societies, fundraisers only for the corrupted monarchies since the beginning of biological time. And that is the joke about Brussels that I played earlier on. Look up Ralph Fiennes and the gun issues in the In Bruges film, and you'll see that the whole series of jokes about the monarchy and the Königsberg asset parks, and which means the King's asset parks in Brussels, where the EU is run and was sold in the form of Britain's gold by Gordon Brown the traitor, and the whole story is a continuous series of people that run the world as political leaders who are just puppets for the corrupted moneylenders. Right then, so we were talking about salt mines and the places where they came out of, yeah, in the Hanseatic town of Lüneburg. And Lüneburg is called the salt town, a reminder of the days when it was a centre of a major salt industry. And because it's mined out now, like all of the things that we despoil, as soon as we get to America, all of the resources are suddenly disappeared. Yeah, and all of it, none of it is done in a sustainable way, which is why I'm delighted to be talking to the woman from Austria who now lives in the Scottish Islands, because she wants to live a natural life without despoiling anything. And she's had a warning from her neighbours because her bees are now shitting on their neighbours' cars. Yeah, and that is banned, and she's had to relocate her beehives. And all the bees are now imposed massive chemical threats by the massive industry that is the chemical industry that has been used to profiteer from God's wonderful world. And all of the scams that they pull, including the massive dams all around the world, are so that the gods cannot create the biblical floods and the rewards for the good people. All of it is in private hands since John Major was in power and took over from Mrs. Thatcher, the world's greatest woman. Okay, so that's where I got stuck yesterday on Dr. Stephen Andrew Hancock's and him falling out with all of his capitalist friends in the Salter family with the hairy legs, because all of them are money launderers and are in the Probus clubs and are stealing from the world's children and the world's dental students, which is how my wife and him make their living. And all of that becomes the joke about my family on the telly. Right then. And our dentists now are from Poland, from Gdansk, where the revolutionaries used to come from, but now they're all part of the same massive global intel team for the world owners. And they're going to profiteer in Africa. I forget whether it's Ghana or whether it is the joke about Malawi again. Yeah, but here we've got Lunenburg in Heidi country, okay, just to the south of Hamburg, and the Hanseatic League is all along the Baltic coast, where Gerhard Schroeder has sunk the nuclear plants so that the Gazprom scam is run out of Russia and way out of Ukraine, away across there in a massive pipeline. Yeah, that means that all of the politicians profit from a new venture, and all of the lights go out if war is declared somewhere in between. Yeah, all of it has come from formerly Russian assets that have been stolen from the Russian democracy, that has been stolen by Henry Kissinger, the Prince's Trust, and prominent members of the Rothschilds who are on the Future of Russia Fund, on the Oxford Russia Society run by the late Lord Patton, that the BBC do not have the courage to give us the news on. Okay, so Lüneburg lies on the river Ilmenau, and that is related to the word menu, and it's on the river Elbe, which is the Elbe joke about Napoleon and the revolution. Okay, Lüneburg Heath, which emerged as a result of widespread tree felling, forest fires and grazing. You hearing what I'm telling you about them despoiling it, about making it non-sustainable? And that is the clog joke about the wooden shoes, because the cog is how the Hanseatic Trade Pact trades its global products. The concept that we can have hobbits working for safety in localism projects is a joke about the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, and that is the joke about globalization and about everything being complex and no one being able to feed themselves in times of crisis, except those in the palace with the downstairs slaves, the first people to be starved after they have been sexually abused and conscripted into the massive armies that die in huge numbers in every one of their conflicts, and all of it is associated with the chalky board person. Yeah, and the blackboard used to be the chalkboard, but now it's the whiteboard joke for Bill Clinton. Yeah, and all of the rich people all around the world, and that is the Tom Sawyer painting the whiteboard fence. Yeah, and the whiteboard is a joke about all of the other countries, and the black slaves and the yellow slaves and the red man that was the 500 nations being killed by the white master race that is the Aryans that run all of these wars and all of the religious frauds. Yeah, I've gotten off the topic of why we started in Culloden, so I think I might tell you the story about that first. Okay, so there's Lunenburg's 6 historic town gates, and all of them are linked to the Jewish angel jokes. That's the Torah, and the Jewish text is the name of 5 of those 6 gates. And there we have the Bardowick joke, which is the Berwick and the Breivik jokes. Yeah, and the Bardowick joke is that the bards are the false writers that cover up the history, and they rewrite the Shakespearean stories to cover all of the crimes of Jack the Ripper. And there is the town districts, and you've got Lune and Moorfield and Mittlefield, and there's nothing sinister in that. As a result, increasing quantities of salt mined with improved technical equipment, the ground began to sink by several metres. Not an accident. Okay, God can have fun again, yet, because all of their scams are short-termist and will asset strip all of the resources really quickly. None of it is sustainable. 3 Little Piggies and the Acts of God. Yeah, and the Albert and Ernie division. Okay, So let's take you to George the First. Yeah? So when we needed religious strife to kill the people again, they choose a German from Hanover, right next door to Dresden, yeah, right next door to the Belsen death camp. Yeah, and George the First is a Hanoverian king. Let me show you the Culloden story. Okay, so the reason I played the Pink Panther songs is I was looking at this just before I started to remake this third of the 4 videos that I'm going to make on these massive pan-continental European monarchy frauds that involve the Windsors and the German dukedoms. Yeah, and the German dukedoms are all over the world now, all over America, all over South America, all over Ukraine and Eastern Europe and Russia since Queen Catherine the Great, the Brit, went there. Okay, so this man was defamed by his own family because after he had committed the Battle of Culloden as the Duke of Cumberland in 1746 and led the Redcoats to that massive slaughter, which there is no film footage of anymore. Yeah, the joke about kidnapped is a joke about the Balfours and all of the people that are involved with the Robert Louis Stevenson globalism project. Yeah, and all of that now covers up the involvement of the Stuart dynasty, the involvement of the Catholic versus Protestant issue that is still the sectarian violence in Ireland and Glasgow, the football sectarian centre, yeah, where all of the football managers, all of the players like Kenny, Matheson, Dalglish are on the boardrooms. I used to admire them for being spirited people. The whole of the sporting area is a fraud for geopolitical and monetary gain. Which is why I'm particularly ashamed of all of the people that have played for the All Blacks who went to Otago Boys. It used to be an asylum. Yeah, at least then they were suppressing innocent people in that institution. Now they're training them to steal from the great games and companies that they run. Yeah, and all of the companies and all of the labour for companies like Guinness and Cadbury's who operate in Dunedin, yeah, where Richie McCaw comes from, yeah, they are now sending the labour to China, like Lord Sanderson of Bowden and the Scottish textile industries, because all of it, they do not want to build a sustainable society in their own country because they're under orders to do that. That's called the Protocols of Zion, and it also was used to spark the cull of the American Indians and World War I. With creative input from people from Britain who win the German Iron Cross and have the same name as the British Prime Minister who takes us to war. That's Chamberlain. Right then, so Culloden George. Despite Culloden, he had a largely unsuccessful military career, and following the convention of Closters, which is where the Pink Panthers were made, in 1757, he never held active military command and switched his attentions to politics and horse racing, like Archie Rosebery. Yeah, and the horse racing becomes the diversion for the world's elites, and the Governor Generals share it as the GG jokes, and the Queen Mum, who's a maid from the downstairs sector, gets to become really popular because she's from the downstairs sector and the people love her for her simplicity. Massive mansions on the north coast of Sutherland, right at the top of the country. Yeah, and my wife has visited all of these places. My wife is not religious, and God bless her for that. Yeah, but I believe that she will understand the persecution of religions so that Britain can become the Rule Britannia project. She knows that. She's a strong supporter of it. Her mother knew the lyrics of Rule Britannia when she came to see the Thompson's monument, which was its composer's monument, yeah? And they know all about the asset stripping of our country. That's why they share the jokes about the gonculator and all of the characters that they have. Geoffrey, their little gonk, is the Jeff Chaucer joke out of Berkhamsted and the elite writers joke. Okay, right then. So, Culloden. So this one succeeded in killing the disarrayed armies led by the little poofy French king. Yeah, and the Catholic thing. And so what you've got is butchery, and his name is Butcher Cumberland. Yeah, and he then began to lose all of the battles that he was sent into. So he was defamed by his own parents and his own family, and he was forced to retire to fucking cloisters and to spend the rest of his life skiing for a laugh. Okay, and the rest of the family then become 60-year claimants to the throne, because he was missed out, and they put in King George III, the mad one in the Hollywood movie. And then very soon after that, you have the next set of German frauds involving the Dukes, not of Cumberland, but of Cumbria and Teviotdale, all on the west coast, where the trust is for the people that fight against the landmines, but it is just a charitable scam, like all of the lorries and the delivery systems that are run as scams and charities, and everything that's in the high street now is a scam or a charity, because all the rest of the people that are viable business people have to take loans from the massive chambers of commerce run by the corrupted people who run the Las Vegas military tattoo and give the preacher's sermon at the Church of Scotland, and are the local council leaders, and asset strip everything that used to be the country's, yeah, until John Major took over from Mrs. Thatcher. And the dinner ladies were privatised too. Okay, so do you see why I played you the music? It's about the myth that is global law enforcement and the capacity of the world's elites to steal and kill for all of human history. Let me show you what's further up this page, because we started at the bottom. Okay, so the Marquis of Berkhamsted is the Hanoverian dynasty, and President de Gaulle lived his life in wartime in Berkhamsted for his own safety. Yeah, and the man on the tyrant's hearts and minds at Culloden, but lost most of the subsequent battles and was disgraced by his dad, George II of England. Sorry, I said it was George I that was his dad. Yeah, so George II, when he got sick of him losing all over continental Europe, yeah, this man, even although he was a failure for the rest of his life and he was sent into exile in impoverished Switzerland, he earned an incredible 25,000 a year to be a mercenary all over Europe, and was shot early on in his life, and he's a fat bastard. Yeah, physically incapable of fighting anyone, which is why the Germans train the horses to do it, and that's in the video that I made yesterday. I've not had time to publish them yet, which puts me in a really dangerous position, because the death threat from the chip shop owner could be seen through at any time. Yeah, and that takes you into the Harry Ramsden empire of debt and Ponzi schemes that is all over Europe, and every sector of life they have their fingers on, and all of it has been asset stripped, and all of it is a money laundering scam, which is why I'm so ashamed of my wife and our relatives in the Salter family. In the Hancock's family, they're big time criminals, and they are able to get married in the Hancock's family at St Albans Abbey, yeah, and we cannot afford to go there, and that's Peter Hancock's criminal dynasty. All of them are dead now, because God casts his opinion on the evil people, and I fear what will happen to my wife if she continues along these totally treasonous strands, yeah, and totally profiteering exercises that our brother has led her into. And my children are now following in their footsteps. Okay, so this fat Prince of Cumberland was defamed totally by friends and family once he had gotten rid of the Catholic Jacobite threat in a ruthless manner, which is why you can find no footage of all of the films that horrified me as an altar boy when I was a child. There were many of them. They used to do all of the profiteering. They would take their silver watches out of their pockets and they would stab them with the bayonet if they were not yet dead, and all of that was laughed at. And when I took my American girlfriend around Scotland, we visited that place, and the massive red coat place that is Inverness, yeah, it was also our holiday venues, and they were some of the elite holidays that we had in Scotland, yeah, yeah, on the Caledonian Canal. And that is the acts against God, about the canalization of all of God's creations. Makes them really angry. Please note that in all conflicts in the Christian nations are against other Christians, and the same roots are the same roots and the same authors for the Jewish or the Quran based religions, or in this case the 30 Years' War was just a war fought against the other Christian denominations. Berkhamsted is interesting. It had insurrectionist Baptists, 400 of them in the region. It's associated with revolution, which I find incredible, because it's now associated with the Harris family, my wife, yeah, and all of the intel operations and all of the intel involvement of the Eastman Kodak company and all of the affiliations that we now have with the American nation and all of the CIA, MI6, MI5 interlocks and the corrupted elections that consume every country on our globe now. That was the only thing that American Jim Fetzer would talk to me about after he had released with Greg Hallett, the late Greg Hallett, yet all of the secrets about the monarchy for 160 years before they changed the laws of succession. He has not got the courage, Jim Fetzer, to talk about religion in any shape or form until because I mentioned the war crimes joke involving Mr. Bean, the Puppy Fund, Butcher Haig, all of the university leaders. Greg Hallett talked openly about all of that, which is why he's the late Greg Hallett. Okay, so the Baptists in Berkhamsted were revolutionary, and one of them was disemboweled because he led the revolution with Cromwell that led to regicide. I think it was Charles I or Charles II that was executed by those revolutionaries, led by the Baptist affiliation, out of Christendom and out of elite Berkhamsted. Yeah, where the people like Charles de Gaulle come for their own safety in wartime. Okay, so Charles I and its cinema is world class with waves and shells, and the cinema is called the Rex. Do you know what that means? It means king. And Geoffrey Chaucer, the legendary writer, was a citizen of that town and was clerk of works at Berkhamsted Castle, where Graham Greene, the elite author, went to school. They acknowledge the use of arsenic in the medicines, but there is no mention at all of my employers in that tiny town of Berkhamsted, who were the Wellcome Foundation, where my boss, Trevor Jones, his body double now worships at the Kelso Jehovah's. Yeah, and Trevor Jones, if you look him up on De Beer, on Debrett's or the rich listing that is the Forbes, yeah, he's in the most rich people in the world now. Trevor Jones, my old boss. All of the pharmaceutical companies all over Britain and Europe have been closed except for the German ones, because the German people just keep getting abused. They're efficient, they're lean, they're slender, they're good athletes, they're good thinkers, yeah. But because of all of those parasitic princes all over their country that are into the Rothschilds' breeding chambers all over Hertfordshire and then the rest of the world, we have a calamity for the world. There's the actor that plays Jeff Chaucer in the movie about, I forget what it was called, but the blonde actor that played the hero in that film was alleged to have been killed by the world's governments. I do not believe that those things, they will just be in the tax havens with the tax evaders. Yeah, if he is genuine, it's really regretful that I cannot remember the name of the hero, who looked a bit like Johnny Wilkinson, who was the hero in the English rugby team at that time, also out of corrupted Tynedale, where they translated the English Bible really early in the sad religious story. And there is De Gaulle at John F. Kennedy's funeral laughing at the Stars and Stripes joke. Yeah, that's the land of the braves already culled, yeah, by the cavalry that is the Calvary Hill Christianity joke, and replaced by 13 Rothschild owned central banks to issue the money not to America, that's impoverished and it is a massive toxic debt place like everywhere else, but to the Rothschilds and their fascist friends that run all wars, and they also run the war bonds scandal for the actors from Zionist Hollywood. Jeff Chaucer, yeah? Geoffrey, one of the gonks in my brother-in-law's collection. Humphrey is one of the others, and that is the American president Hubert Humphrey. Massive jokes, crimes against the people committed by every one of the American and French presidents, but none of it gets released into the news because that is run by the Warner Brothers and the Fox News empire and is passed on to News Corp, which is Rupert Murdoch's corrupted empire run out of Chipping Norton, which is why I'm writing to Jeremy Clarkson and to the former Chancellor's news diversion, Angela Lawson, because all of them are traitors to their country. Like Ali G, they're much more innocent than the political leaders who are just puppets like De Gaulle. Yeah, they have no courage. They wear the general's uniform through all of their life in politics, and they hide in wartime in Hertfordshire under the Rothschilds' thrall, near Petty France, where the boss at the Bank of England lives. Okay, and I discovered another joke the other night when I was looking into the more recent scandals in Hertfordshire. That film was called I might have it. No, I don't have it. It was the favourite for our friends in Hexham that are also horsey people and will not talk to me now. Yeah, because their neighbours are the Probus Club profiteers. Those are the people that play Santa Claus at Christmas. Yeah, the capitalist world and the Christian world is a total nightmare for all of its victims. That is the whole of the global citizenship, and the Freemasons are worse, because they just live their whole lives as part of this fraud, and they're quite happy if they get a couple of pints for their troubles. Right then, so let's show you a little bit more about George I, who was brought in to replace the Queen that was obligated, Queen Anne. She had to become an Anglican worshipper, like Justin Welby, the oil magnate. Okay, and we've got quite a lot highlighted here, and we've got the links to Prince William, Duke of Gloucester, Act of Settlement 1701. So this is William and Mary and the Royal Dutch involvement through the linkage to Winston Churchill and through the linkage always, George surviving uncle died and inherited further German dominions in the Principality of Lüneburg, Grubenhagen, yeah, right up next to where the Von Trapp Admiral was asked to join the Austrian Navy. Sketch map of Hanover circa 1720 showing the relative locations of Hanover, Brunswick, yeah, and all of the links to Hitler and the Third Reich, training and using the Christian pulpits in the Christian churches in Brunswick, yeah, and that is where Beaverbrook came from, in New Brunswick in Canada. And all of them think it's really funny to keep replaying this at the 1936 Olympics and then the 2012 Olympics. Same story, same fascism. Princess Anne wants gas. And you've got the implantation of the German munitions and the handles into the courts in London, yeah, that are run by the German claimants, yeah, and everybody in the government, like Disraeli, because they're Zionists too, they just roll over and die, and they condone what they do. And the Peels that live in Henderside are the people that emancipate the slaves and make all those democratic refinements, yeah, and the whole thing is about Catholic versus Protestant for all of that bloody period, all in the false Christianity religion that all of them understand, including Thomas More, who was executed. But because the New World Order authors like Jeff Chaucer and Shakespeare are actually modern day news releases to cover all of these sins, yeah, like Enid Blyton was, and everybody that my wife admires, which is why she left that book behind. Yeah, her brother stopped working in the dental sector, yeah, so that he could become a playwright, and Michael Heseltine and all of the dental bosses took him back into Baker Street, and they doubled his salary, because they gave him the same salary as he got in dentistry already as its leading publisher. And his inspiration in life was a man called Ronald, who's Ronnie fucking Barker in the Chipping Norton set and in the Poofda world, yeah, and all of the Chipping Norton set is there to steal from all of the world's people, because it's linked to Rupert Murdoch and the American fascists through all of the political links to David Cameron and the Connies that are the Conservative parties, and the rabbits in Hitler's friends, and the Winston Churchill sign for victory, and the rabbits being allowed to escape into Latin America and run the narcotics for the rest of world history, yeah, until I come along and start to expose them for it. Okay, so are you seeing it? Every cull, every revolution, every religious war, every conflict between denominations, and here we've got the Great Turkish War. Do you understand now the imposition of Otto from the Piso family, who becomes Otto the onion seller on the French bikes in the Great World War II conflict and the 1950s, when we launch BBC Light Entertainment and all of the Zionist jokes about Zebedee and Andy Pandy and Teddy all over again, yeah, with the Jewish leaders who were the spies and the double agents, with all of the Blunt family, with Uncle Desmond Morton, with Ian Fleming and all of the jokers at the 2012 opening ceremony for the Olympics, and the historic time teams that are sponsored by Walt Disney, the leading Zionist organisation on our globe now. In 1683, George and his brother Frederick Augustus served in the Great Turkish War at the Battle of the Central Bank of Vienna, and Sophia Dorothea bore George a son, George Augustus. Okay? So the wee brother that was born into this family gets nothing and is sent to war and is taken out in case he becomes a claimant to one of those hundreds of protectorates and electorates that they still run, so that they can have such a sophisticated set of breeding chambers to keep Europe corrupted for all of its history. And then to send them way out west in the Pilgrim Fathers and all of the new denominations, and the Baptists become really popular, and you get the people who become the Amish and all of it gets covered, and all of it leads to massive religious divide, and the people will not talk to each other. They've got lawsuits between the Jehovah's and the Church of Rome because they persecute each other now in their crime scenes as they try and steal the world's religious people's funds. Okay? And what you've got in this sad story about Kallenberg and Göttingen and all of the little principalities, yet you get unexpected deaths, and the Salic sexual no queens laws means that it's really easy to top your wife and for nobody to notice it. Yeah? And they've got several of them that get involved in several love affairs, yeah? And all of that is before Rupert Murdoch was able to trivialise all of that in the Sun newspapers. Yeah? So it's just the same story again and again and again, and Britain has been afflicted by the linkage to the German monarchies. All of them, yeah, are now in such a dangerous corner because this history cannot be covered up any longer. Yeah? And what they've done, there's nothing left to steal, and they dedicate the whole of their lives to cover-ups of the history of the world as far back as we're talking. That's since the fictitious Jesus was alleged to be born in the no room in the Innsbruck area. Yeah? And all of it is a fairy story that we spend all of the world's assets covering, and we still, for a laugh, send terrorists onto beaches and keep holidaymakers in fear of their lives, and we blow up oil stations like they did in Hemel Hempstead to keep the whole of the free world in terror. And Princess Anne is particularly vicious. Yeah? She pretends to be an honest, sporting person. They get involved with her royal cars in terrorist events that is just members of their household making news with Phoenix Film Partners and all of those illegitimate Michael Grade Ponzi schemes that are the massive false news events all around the world, run out of fucking Folkestone, because that's where Charles Dickens launched the Go East Young Man stuff with Steerforth and the beautiful little girl that is little Emily. Yeah, the virgin despoiled by the capitalist dream and taken into Germany by the British traders out of Folkestone, and the ship is the upturned ship on the beach where ham, with the word ham in it, lives in poverty, and all of them are caught up in accidents that are massive weather storms and means that they drown at sea. Yeah, and that all of a sudden, when I come along and begin to collate the statistics on people that die really young when they commit massive crimes against the people, yeah, even in the Hollywood sector, yeah, they have to create then the cartoon sector because they are physical cowards. I forget the name of the racing driver who caved his skull in on the ski slopes. He was alleged to be Jeremy Clarkson's Stig, and he was German, and for years he was the most successful racer in the Formula 1 cars. George died on a trip to his native Hanover, where he was buried. George the First. Yeah, so you can see where their affiliation is. They are Germans, but they are elected, because they're Protestants, to be the king in Britain, with 50 closer claimants to the throne, had there never been a fictitious Jesus Christ. and that is the morality upon which our world is based. Yeah, which is why I intend to stand up in Jedburgh law courts and ask them and demand from them why they have totally ignored my statement that I do not accept the legitimacy of the Crown Court in Scotland, run by the Crown Office and the illegitimate murderous family that killed Princess Diana, because she was in a position to reveal the truth about the West Country and Cumberland secrets, yeah, but not about the false monarchy, but about the landmines traded there by the Bredenkamps from South Africa, and all of the secrets that David Cameron was made privy to because he was in the nuclear sales delegation that Mrs. Thatcher sent to corrupt South Africa and Rhodesia. And I've got all the pictures of Prince Charles shaking hands with the Rhodesian kings and the black men and the people that desert their nation in favour of the fur coat. And when you look at Mandela's funeral and all of the selfie pictures that are taken, all of the people that attend are not from the impoverished ghettos. Yeah, they're from the elites that run and own the world like this. Okay, God is now tracking them and they are in a state of panic. Okay, George was born on the 20th May 1660 in Hanover in the Holy Roman Empire. Yeah, do you see the irony of it? Watch the Gladiator film, watch the Germanic pagans refusing to take their offer that we will run your country thousands of miles from our Christian home in Rome, and we want to convert you to Christianity. Their kings are already all the way up to the Baltic coast the Christian emperors. Yeah, and all of the genocides are for the same cause, to get rid of the poor people and to give them those vast tracts of land. Okay, so you've seen the scam at Culloden with the Redcoats. Same scam, same families, same blame shed on them by the politicians, but the money lenders are the only people that count, and they make all of the strategic decisions. Yeah. Which is why we have no banking regulation, and Mervyn King is particularly evil in his life, yeah, because he removed regulation from the Bank of England, yeah, and he allowed them to start issuing money to the fraudsters that are busting every pension fund and has had the public sector salaries frozen for 7-8 years back to back. Yeah, and here you've got the myth about the New World Order writers. I discovered this later than all of the other secrets, but it takes you into the Shakespeare, and the jokes about the. So Chaucer is in the stories, yeah, about and he writes the stories about Canterbury Tales. Yeah, it's about the Christian myths. Okay, Jeff Chaucer. What was the name of the film and who was the actor that died? No, I cannot recall it. But the Makar story. Now, because I got the death threat from the chip shop owner, as soon as I saw this last night, yeah, it's a link to elite authors, and James the First is involved in that, because they use the elite authors to translate the Christian Bible and to create the sectarian division that is the Glasgow Celtic, Glasgow Rangers thing, that is the Irish Troubles for all of that time. And the Makars are the creative people like Burns and Walter Scott that are prepared to harbour the world's biggest secrets about Queen Victoria's actual love life in our bedroom. Yeah, and in return they get to be on Radio 4 as James Naughtie. They get to come to the Melrose Book Club in the black and yellow colours all of the time. Yeah, and Alistair Moffat, like Butcher Haig from the Borders region, who loved his horses but did not give a fuck about the dead troops all over World War I, on both sides, all of them singing the Tannenbaum song to share the Christmas tree joke and the Christianity slaughter. yeah, with the elite people in the palaces all over Germany, all over Windsor Park, and all over Balmoral. Yeah, and at Glamis they've got Jack the Ripper interned there for 30 years because he's a royal, and they dare not release him to repeatedly sin on the pavements of Cheapside where the Rothschilds built the Bank of England, the Jack the Ripper crime scene. So you've got monarchy cover-ups, you've got mass murders, the police have a laugh about it, and all of it gets people that are the actors in the movies on rehab because their lives are a lie as well. I forget the name of the actor in the Pirates of the Caribbean, but he was the one that played the lead role with Bilbo from the Lord of the Rings film in the Jack the Ripper stories. I've got it here somewhere. No. Okay, so the Makar, and there's a picture of St Andrew's Cathedral where the golf tournament has just been held. Yeah, the golf is massively interlocked with the horse racing and the cricket and all of the team sports. The rugby, there is no way out for them now. Yeah, they're totally treasonous. And I saw, because of the Jedburgh affiliation, yeah, to the Teviotdale issues and the affiliation to the place with the word Jed in it, near the birthplace for the Warner brothers, there were two of the Jedburgh rugby officials who were given the jobs to be the coaches at Kelso. Yeah, like all of the people from the city of Edinburgh. As soon as I revealed the frauds and the involvement of Andy Irvine and the people, the Hastings that missed the kick, who are asset stripping through the BBC now because they're in the commentary team, yeah, the whole lot of them align to cover up the story, and the whole of the Borders history is a tragedy because all of them massacred their relatives in the poor people sector, and the fat bastards in the tartan trews that get to go to the Las Vegas military tattoo and get to lead the council and make the speech and the sermon from the pulpit about the menace of Islam in the Church of Scotland. Yeah, all of them get the cash, and all of the troops that go to the Tyrol get buried in shallow graves. And if you look at the war memorials to the Scottish regiments in that sinister Protestant church in Parliament Square in Edinburgh, where the law company Arnott Manderson was launched to cover the release of the story that covers the pay rise for Stephen House. That's the Arnott Manderson company that cover the child murder of Moira Anderson. Do you get it? Arnott Moira Anderson. Yeah, and that is what lost Scotland its freedom in the referendum, because the whole of the government are intent on covering up my story, even as Scottish nationalists. That is massive treason, and it is massive crimes against the people of Scotland. Yeah, I don't care about the people of Scotland because they don't care about their own future. I care about the world's future and the extinction issues that they totally ignored in the Trident 3 and Trident 4 scandal that could have freed Scotland first and then freed the whole world by reclaiming the issuance of democratic funding. Okay, so the Makars are a joke about the really wonderful writers like these bastards that tell lies about world history all of the time, even in this current day and age. Alistair Moffat is a Kelso citizen. He defrauded and plagiarised his own book on Borders history. Head of BBC Scotland, head now of St Andrews University, where he trains the royal children to steal and kill. Yeah, and where his predecessor, Butcher Haig, was also the rector. Okay, so the Macquarie story is that there's a chip shop run by the Macquaries, and Lou Macquarie plays football for sectarian Celtic. And the Macar is an elite author. Okay, and one of Scotland's key buildings in the classical period of the Macars, the elite authors, in the Abbey sector. Yeah, and I've told you all about the Priory jokes and the Paisley Abbey and how all of the warlords, that thing there is called a facade, and that is the icon for the Hundy Mundy Christian movement. Yeah, there's a monument like that in one of my favourite places, very near my first school. Yeah, my mum was threatened by it because it's a graveyard. Yeah, and it overlooks her birthplace on the Balfours farm. Yeah, which is very near my birthplace, and it is about globalism. So the Hundy Mundial joke is the joke, and it's right in front of the massive castle that runs that for-profit burial ground, and that is where Mrs. Knox, because she's a female doctor, but she does not get to be called Mrs. Knox, Dr. Knox, because her husband is also a doctor. It's like the Salic laws. Yeah, so Mrs. Knox, whose husband brought me into the world in the cottage hospital that has now become an elite residence. Yeah, and all of it is a joke about globalism, and the authors are there to cover the horrible history of globalism. And all of the abbeys get knocked down by people like King Henry, who are God's representative in England. Okay, after the Priory was flattened and replaced, okay, so the Berkhamsted Priory is a crime scene because the King's got a castle there, and you've got Nick Clegg's and Nick Faldo's golf course right next door, and the vast tracts of land that are owned by the Berkhamsted Golf Club are bigger than anything else in Berkhamsted. Yeah, and the Priory was flattened and replaced by the Bonner Law Business School at Ashridge, where my wife trained, and all of the Butlins personnel went, and I met them on the river, and some of them committed suicide because they know that their lives are a lie, and the Harris family are just a primitive cover for the war crimes inquest chairs at Nuremberg's. And when the sheriffs at Jedburgh learn that, and they realise that they are complicit in that information, it makes them war criminals, and it makes cowards like Kev Drummond drop out of the judiciary and fuck off to his retirement in his elite fraudulent epicentre, wherever it is that he lives, in his second or third homes. Okay, so I've explained enough about the role of the false writers like Jeff Chaucer, yeah, and why my brother-in-law has chosen that to laugh at in the naming of his little iconic dolls that are jokes about merchandising and everything that the Hancock's family have done to British trains, to British dentistry, to dental students under prospects of having a life insolvency. All of that has been dropped in my divorce case. They now have no clauses at all for divorcing me, and they've removed the clause that my wife left home more than 2 years ago, which was the only thing that made the divorce legitimate in the last hearing. Before they removed £60,000 from my pension fund, because I've exposed all of the frauds against all of the Scottish People's pension funds and all of the British People's pension funds, including the Coppers pension funds and the asset stripping of police properties all over the country. Right then, so let's move on to another macabre that I care more about than any of the other fraudsters that defraud the whole of world history, and that takes us into the people that Rupert Murdoch murdered on the way into the Leveson inquiry. This could also be false news, but I do not know for sure, because nobody's allowed to. Sean Hoare died of natural causes. Yeah, after the inquest was held into his premature death. Yeah, so he died aged 48 in Watford, where Elton John has his babies against the laws of God, because he's a poof, and the babies are raised out of a test tube. Yeah, and the ovaries are donated by women for profit. Yeah, and that is the future of the world that these bastards run.